I believe the year is 1980. Oh, let me go back a ways for some. But, okay, the movie, it's got Jack Nicholson, okay, Tom Cruise, and Demi Moore. Okay, don't say anything, okay? Like, especially you, Colleen. You're like this movie buff. The situation is a military trial, and Jack Nicholson is a colonel of a base, I believe Guantanamo Bay. It's a base, and a soldier has been murdered. And Jack Nicholson is on trial. He's not actually the ones on trial. There are two soldiers that are actually on trial. Tom Cruise is an attorney. He's what do you call those guys that do the litigation in the Navy? Anyway, he's got Jack Nicholson on the stand, and things are heating up, and stuff is starting to point towards the colonel that he's the bad guy. And there's one scene that's, if you've seen the movie, this is the scene that stands out. You ready, John? Give it a whirl.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Do you know the movie? A Few Good Men. And Jack Nicholson, as it turns out, Jack Nicholson is the colonel, and he calls a code red on a soldier, which is almost, it can be a death sentence for this particular soldier. It was permission for other soldiers to teach that soldier a lesson. And it ends up, this one soldier dies. Jack Nicholson is led away by MPs complaining, what is going on here? You can't do this, as he's led out of the room into custody. You can't handle the truth. And Mr. Nicholson leads us into what we're going to be talking about today. And it's the idea of truth, of stuff that is true. And I'd like us to think about that for just a moment, about places in our lives where we don't want to hear the truth. Whether it's from a parent, or from a friend, or even the voice inside of us that says, you're living in a fantasy world, and we all do this. We all are presented with truths that run up against what we think we believe, okay, stuff in life. And it runs up against it, and we resist, and we say, no, this is what's true. And we live in our own little bubble, and depending on how much fantasy we have going on, I mean, it can be a thick bubble or a thin bubble that gets popped easily, but regardless, we all resist the truth. What are some of the ways, where are some of the places in your life where you're lying to yourself? Where you're telling yourself a story, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, because we do this to cope, right? I mean, this is not like a judgment of good or bad, or God's against you, or it's against the Bible, but it's just human. But what are the places in your life where you're lying to yourself? Either to maintain some sort of semblance of sanity, or try to stay calm, or whatever. And why do we do this? Why do we do this to ourselves? That we'd rather settle for something that we've made up in our head rather than what's actually happening. What's actually happening. I mean, think about places, relationships. Oh, he really likes me, or she really likes me, or things that we've done. Oh, it wasn't that bad. They were just words. It's not a big deal. And we minimize our impact on other people and other people in doing stuff with us. And we basically lie to ourselves, to cope. But what if the truth was actually more friendly than what we had imagined? In fact, What if living in a truthful reality wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be? In fact, it would set us free. It actually set us free to be more happy, more whatever in our lives. What if there were ways that we could bring truth into our lives that would be better? One of the symbols of God, okay, in the Bible, if you read through the Bible, there are lots of symbols, fire and all that stuff. One of the main symbols of God is light. It's light. And light's a cool thing, you study it in science class, and it can be a particle or it could be a wave. And nowadays, physicists are discovering all sorts of new things with light particles, cool stuff you can do, entanglement and all this stuff. But light it's a fascinating thing. And what an amazing symbol for God, or at least how God works. What I'd like to look at this morning, and again, keeping in mind that we're going to have some discussion time, so be thinking about this or questions that you might have or comments or whatever, but we're going to look at the three aspects of God as light that will be beneficial for you, that can actually change the way that you live out your day, your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you begin to understand this aspect of God, a God who never leaves you, a God who always loves you. And I know that may sound unusual, especially in church. A lot of churches, it's kind of like God loves you if you're good. It's kind of a Santa Claus deal with God. But if you're naughty, you get the piece of coal in your stocking or in your heart or whatever God does, or you live in the hot coals. Whatever, but the idea that God is with you everywhere you go, there's a presence and a power and a love with you wherever you go that can help you to be happy, prosperous, whatever in life. And this is regardless of age, background, whatever, things that you're going through in life. That is a constant. So 3 aspects of truth, of God as light, that can benefit you and can actually change the way in which you view people, view yourself, and look at your circumstances, your challenges in life, whatever. 3 things that can actually change the way that you live practically in and out of this daily life. Okay, you've got Bibles. You can follow along if you want to. I'm going to read it out of mine. I take that back. Actually, I think I'll read out of one of these Bibles too, so that the language is the same. We're going to look at 3 different scripture passages out of the New Testament. All of them were written by a fellow named John. Okay, he was an apostle, close follower of Jesus, and he wrote quite a bit. Next to Apostle Paul, he wrote quite a bit of the New Testament. So the first thing we're going to look at is on page 78. These Bibles are divided into, the biggest chunk is Old Testament, and that has their own page system. It's a little confusing. The New Testament is the smaller part on the right, and that has its own page system. And so we're going to be looking at New Testament, page 78. So that should take us to John chapter 8, the 8th chapter of John's Gospel. That's page 78, so I'll find it, but it's toward the right. It's like you're about 3/4 at least through this Bible. Page 78. Getting there. Okay, John chapter 8, starting at verse 12. And it's about mostly down the page. And my 12 is in bold for some reason. And Jesus is speaking, and he says, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And the first advantage of understanding and receiving, going deeper in this whole idea of God is light, Jesus is light, is that Jesus is there for your journey, your life journey. It doesn't matter what you're going through, whether you're happy right now or depressed right now, whether it's a dark place that you're in or a light place or happy place or not happy place. Jesus is with you there in your journey, and he says, he who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And so the first thing about God is light is that it's like a flashlight. God can shine light on your path. He can guide you. There can be guidance for you. You're not just in this life alone. You don't have to just try to figure out on Google Maps, where the heck am I going? What am I doing? What's the purpose in life? What am I about? I feel lost. It's about a friend guiding you. And I know God's invisible. That makes it a little tricky. But there is a sense in your heart where you can sense where God is. And again, it's not about being a Christian or going to church or all this stuff. Everybody, every last single human being, I don't care how young or old they are, babies, God puts stuff in their hearts. Okay? There's love, there's guidance, there's all sorts of good things. That's God's nature, is he does this stuff. And that tucked in your heart someplace, if you're going to listen to it a little bit, there'll be that light. Jesus, he's not stingy. He doesn't say, well, you haven't gone to church for so long and all this. I'm only going to put a tiny thimble full of light. That's all you get, man. No, that's not how he operates. He pours like over. It's the fire hydrant, that's, all this water and light and stuff coming out. Presence of God is pouring out over us every second of the day. It's about waking up to it, getting sensitive to it, tuning into it, in a sense. So the first part of light is it can guide our path. God will guide our path. He'll show you. It may be just the next step that you take, but that's it. That's it. And that's what you need. And he will confirm that in various ways, and some of them are kind of interesting and very creative at times. But God will confirm where you are walking. You've got decisions in front of you. You've got things that you have to do or don't do or stay away from or dive into. God will show you that. And it's being tuned in. That's a big part of prayer, is just listening to what God is doing. Not so much asking God for stuff, but just listening and learning to tune in. And every single person in this room can do that. You can. I mean, we all start somewhere. It's like riding a bike or whatever, but you can learn to do that. Learn to tune in, to listen to your heart. That's why quiet time is so important, that taking a quiet time either in the morning or in the evening and doing some reflective time, taking a deep breath and saying, okay, God, how are we doing? What's going on? And you may say, I don't feel much of anything, but you will. Give him time. Give yourself some time. You'll begin to sense some guidance in your life, some light shining in your path. I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. You have light coming out of you. You may be a flashlight for somebody else who is trying to make a decision in their life. And you can let that light in your life spill out a little bit onto their path too, because we're all in this together. So lighting your journey, giving you guidance, that's one advantage of light. The second one is found in John chapter 3, so you just back up a bit, page 73, so from 78 to 73. John chapter 3, that's the one that has the famous, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, to the end that all that believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. John 3, we're going to do John 3:16 through 21. 16th verse through the 21st verse. So, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send the Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world might be saved through him. He who believes in him is not judged, because he who does not believe has been judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. This is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and that people loved, men, women, loved darkness rather than the light, for their deeds were evil. For everyone who does evil hates the light, and does not come to the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But he who practices the truth comes to the light, so that his deeds may be manifested in having been wrought in God. Okay, so there's like this evil person and good person and all this stuff. And the second thing, what the light does is it exposes stuff in our lives. Okay, we're able to see clearly what's going on in our lives, what's happening in our lives. Rather, again, you can't handle the truth. I mean, there are things about who we are. I mean, things, not so great things. We have attitudes and sensitivities, and we react to people, and we do stuff that we wish we could undo, right? And light exposes all that, and you go, oh no. And our greatest fear is like rejection, that God's going to reject us. He's going to see, well, with people too, right? You know, the people will see our warts and, you know, stupid habits and weird attitudes and strange things about us. And we thought, I just want to blend in. I just want to be accepted by people. I just want to be accepted by God. And the cool thing is, and churches don't make enough about this, is that Jesus says that God didn't send him into the world to judge. In fact, later on in John, Jesus talks about not judging again. And then he says, and the Father doesn't judge anybody either. But there's still a judgment. There's a light that shines on us. And here's, you've got two choices, okay? When you meet the truth, when the light shines into your life, you can do two things. You can fight it or run away. I guess that's, wow, three things, okay? You can fight it, you know, battle against it, and we do that. You know, we resist the truth. I don't want to do that. You're stupid. Don't tell me what to do. You can fight it. You can run away from it, okay? And we do various things about running away, how we try to avoid the truth. We dance around it. We self-medicate. We drink, take drugs, distract ourselves. That's running away, basically. So we can run away. Or the third thing we can do is we can let the light shine through and do what it's supposed to do. Realizing that God is not judging us in the process, okay? That this is just a process of growth and coming into our purpose in life and happiness and all that. But it's a willingness to not just let kind of light shine on our path, but let light shine through our hearts. Every aspect, every part of our heart, even that little closed closet that we keep shut and locked really tight. Don't go in there. That's my secret place. And God says, no, it's cool. I love you. That there's nothing that you can do, nothing that you can think, nothing that anything in your life, there's nothing. In fact, the Bible says this, there's nothing, absolutely nothing that can take you away from the love of God in Jesus Christ. Now, this isn't normally taught, okay? Because a lot of stuff, you know, it's like conditional, like you better be good, and going to church is all about ethics and being good and jumping through hoops and all this. And God says no. Jesus says no. It's about resting in a love that will never, ever be taken away from you. Even when you're at your worst. Absolute worst. At the bottom of the pit, Jesus is there with you, loving you. And that's hard to imagine, and that's why we're going to be exploring this on Tuesday morning. Maybe you can imagine it in your head, but it's hard to imagine it in your heart, that you are actually loved, you are valuable, you are worthy, you are redeemable, you are precious in the sight of God, and in certain people too. So the second part is that our true self, the light clarifies who we truly are. Because there are parts of you too that you don't realize the skills, the talents, the capacity that you have as a human being. You don't have a clue either. You go, I can't do anything. I'm so stupid. Whatever, you know, and day after day, but you don't realize the amazing gift and the potential that you have as a human being. And part of this clarification, part of this light, is to open you up to some new possibilities. It allows you to see a whole new picture of yourself in the light of God's love. The God who does not judge you, but is here to build you up, to bring you into a place of closeness with Him, that you will never, ever be alone in this life. It takes practice, okay? Our third and final one, is what the light does to clarify things. We're going to get out of the gospel there, but it's a letter that John wrote, one of 3 that we have. This is from 1 John chapter 1, verses 4 through 7, and that's found on page 184. Page 184 of the New Testament. Flipping. 1 John, first chapter of 1 John, and starting at the 4th verse, 4 through 7. This is the message we have heard from Him, God, capital Him, and announced to you, that God is light, and in Him there is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with Him, and yet walk in the darkness, we lie, and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as He Himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, His Son, cleanses us from all sin. And so the third aspect of the light, besides providing guidance for our pathway and for choices we have to make, the second thing is providing insight into who we are, our true selves, and how every aspect of who we are is loved by Jesus Christ every moment of the day. The third aspect here is that when we are walking in this light, we're in fellowship with one another. We sense a connection with people around us, with friends, with family, that somehow Jesus' light clarifies how much we are connected to each other. Even when you're in your own room, even when you're off taking a hike out in the woods, even when you're out fishing by yourself, or you're still connected. And that light shows us that we have this fellowship with one another. And that's really, really important, because to know that we are connected with each one with one another, to know that connection is there, and you sense that you're part of a larger story of Drummond Island, of kids in your class, of family and friends who gather around you. That's why we do so much eating in this church, because there's something about connecting with other people that connects us with God, that connects us with ourselves, that connects us with a happiness, a joy, a peace that we wouldn't otherwise know. It's just like the story of this minister was going out to visit, I think it's an English countryside, so you're just kind of imagining this wonderful English manor, rolling hills and, a little bit of fog. And this English minister goes out to visit a friend of his who he hasn't seen in quite a while, hasn't been in church, he hasn't seen him in town, just hasn't seen him, and they probably have their little brandies and, smoking their cigars or whatever English people do, and they're talking for a while, and then at one point this fellow who owns the house, he's sitting there, he's the host, and he just kind of looks up at the minister, he says, well, what good is it to go to church? Really? I mean, truthfully, practically, what good is it to go to church? And the minister, without saying a word, he walks over to the fire. And they got this wonderful English stone fireplace, right? He walks over and he picks up the tongs, and without saying a word, he just grabs one of the coals and he just gently puts it over on the side of the fireplace, puts the tongs back, sits down. And they both kind of watch as the fire's roaring on, hot embers and the whole thing. And that one little piece of coal, gradually the redness goes down, gets cooler and cooler and cooler until it goes out. The fellow looks down and goes, I'll be in church next Sunday. Because there's something about, even for us who are, I shouldn't say us, but those of us who are introverted and like a more quiet existence, there's something really, really valuable to being connected with other people. Maybe you have one best friend. Maybe you just have certain people that you relate to. But that is absolutely vital to the fire that is in your life. Absolutely vital. And you may think that you can do it alone. You may think you're all independent and stuff. But we cannot do it alone. Not me, not you, not anyone. Even Jesus had to have best friends and buddies around him. Because we support one another. And just like Chuck said, sometimes it's just sitting with one another, that quiet, silence, love, and support, without words. And that is the fire that keeps us going. So, this whole thing about God is light, it's not just some sort of cosmic Sunday school teaching. It's about practical living. It's about making choices in this life and letting God's light shine a bigger path, or maybe some things along your path that you wouldn't see ordinarily. And He will do that for you. God will actually do that for you. He loves you that much. He will show you different aspects. And you'll see stuff in choices or decisions. You'll go, wow, I didn't see that before. If you choose to listen to the light, to watch for the light. Or in terms of who you are, you're feeling down on yourself. Let's say, hey, Jesus, I'm feeling like, I guess I can't say the word in church, but you're feeling like that, right? And you say, okay, Jesus, I'm just feeling really bad. And just sit for a while and let Jesus show you some stuff about who you are and how loved and how precious you are to Him. And then also when you're feeling all alone and isolated, to begin to think about a vital connection with friends and family, people around you. And sometimes we say, well, I don't need any help. I'm good. It's okay. But to be a little more open, and that's why one of the things that we do on Sunday mornings is pray for each other. And it's not like, oh, I'm better than you, or sorry, you're in such a bad place, and all this. We all have junk in our lives. And to pray for one another, to be there, and to know that you have a community that is there for you. Not judging. Jesus doesn't judge. Not pointing a finger. Not saying, you need to do this. You know, all that churchy stuff. But just supporting each other. And having faith that the light of Christ will lead us through. So what do you think? Does that make sense? About being clear? So have you thought about the places in your life where you lie to yourself? Where you live in a fantasy world a bit? Where you feel like you have to tell those lies in order to keep on going? That if the truth were true, or if you actually embraced it, sometimes it feels like things fall apart. Sometimes it feels like you're going to die. But this whole spiritual journey thing, if you are serious about it, if you're serious about a happiness that goes beyond just momentary stuff, then you have to, Jesus said, there is a part of you that needs to die. Sorry, it's not all smiley faces. But the thing that resists it is our egos. We want to be in control. We want to run the levers. We want to pull the whistles and press the buttons and be in control. And part of it is letting go of control and just saying, I can't handle this. And you call a friend. That can be a really spiritual act. Or you pray. You say, well, I haven't prayed before, but let's give it a whirl. And you pray, and you say, God, you're supposed to be there. Help me. Help. And then all of a sudden something happens inside. And it's not like maybe you hear voices, but you get a sense of something. Call it your conscience or whatever you want to call it. But you get a sense of something, and it's different than what you would normally think of. That's God. That's that presence who loves us and will guide us through. Do you notice the phrase that Ruth used? God uses the bad in our lives. I don't believe that God causes bad stuff in our lives. I really don't. We do enough bad stuff to ourselves. There's enough junk in the world. God doesn't even have to help with that. But that God will use the darkest moments, and there's the cross, Jesus on the cross. God uses even the darkest moments to help us to understand and to fall into love with Him. You got me thinking about stuff now. Where I've thought about, like when you have interruptions in your life, like somebody interrupts you, you've got something that you think you need to do, and somebody calls, or a little kid, or something, something happens, and you feel like, oh, I've got to go off and handle this. It's an annoyance, it's a distraction, it's not part of my pathway. And then God goes, He's like stroking, if He has a beard, He's stroking His beard going, that is your pathway. That is your journey. There are no distractions. The stuff that happens in our lives, that's your journey. And you go, but it's such a headache. That is your journey. That's the course that Jesus has you on. Yeah, just this morning, my S10 pickup, okay, it's a 1997 Chevy S10 pickup. And it's starting to look like a Uper car, okay? So it's got the rust going and all that stuff. But the door thing that locks in, on the driver's side, it's goofy. It'll go its own way. And so sometimes it'll flip up, especially when it's cold, ice affects it, and the door won't shut. It won't latch. And it's just annoying. And it happened this morning, and I thought, it's like, would God do that just to get my attention? Yes, He would. To slow me down or whatever. And I have to fiddle with it with my finger. I take my gloves off and fiddle with the little lock thing to set it so that it will catch the pin. But it's like, that's my journey. That's what happens. And different things will happen to slow us down. Anybody here have a problem with procrastination? Anybody? Okay, those of you who didn't raise your hands, you have a problem with lying. Just saying. Okay, so anyway, it's about being present, because that's where God lives. It's a present, being in the present. Get that? Oh. But anyway, it's just being open to a bigger story than what our little fantasy minds will create. Being open to the larger story, and that is God. He's the light, He's the bigger story, and He'll be there for you.